Welcome back to Bearcats Mean Business, the official podcast of the University of Cincinnati's Carl H. Lindner College of Business. My name is Marlene, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at the college. And in this episode, we have an exciting very relevant topic, I think, which is the future of higher education. And I'm excited that today I have a very special guest here who actually inspired me since day one I have joined the college, and that's our very own Dean, Marianne Lewis. Welcome, Marianne.
Thank you, Marlene. So glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And I would say, before we go into the details, let's just jump in with like a big question. When you hear the phrase, the future of higher education, what do you see? Get us inspired.
Oh, yeah. That is the big question. Maybe it's the $1 million question. I mean, when I dream big, Marlene, I think about higher education being more agile, hands-on, and personal. I think from an agility perspective, higher ed needs to be really driven to stay relevant to the market, to the needs of the students, but also the employers. And that is no easy task because the world changes fast. It's also about being really hands-on, is making sure that, we're not an ivory tower, that we keep pushing ourselves to, yes, learn and develop new knowledge within higher ed, but also make sure our students get out of the classroom and try it out and figure out what works best for them. And I think that third piece is about being personal. I mean, learning is personal. And the more we get good at being modular and providing the kinds of learning you need when you need them, we can help people learn their entire lives. And that's what we're here for. And I love my job because it's amazing how much education makes a difference in one's life, in our community, and in the world.
Yeah, that sounds really nice, especially what you said about learning our entire lives, because I think, we had that mindset before where it's like we need a bachelor to, start our career, but it's actually, we can learn even
Just
until the end of our career or
That's
even
right.
beyond,
Agreed.
So that's nice. Well, now higher ed is facing a lot of skepticism these days. There is even, not just in personal conversations I had with people, but also if, I turn on social media, you see these videos saying, hey, you know what, I don't need higher education anymore. Do you think students and parents still believe in the value of higher education?
I think those beliefs are being challenged, and I take that very seriously. I mean, if you look at, the big studies of, say, the Pew survey or the Gallup poll, you'll see it's been confidence in higher ed has been declining for well over a decade. And we need to take that seriously. Part of that is that the world is changing and we need to be able to demonstrate our value. We think all the time at Lindner about ROI, right? Return on investment matters. If the world is hearing, and I always pray it's not us, but they're hearing concerns that debt is high and jobs straight out of college or longer career satisfaction is low, we have a problem. I'm not going to stand for that. Our placement is very high. Our MBA was just rated number 3 in the country for ROI, and we better hold a high bar because if you want learning to be transformational, it needs to have a return, and it needs to be a return immediately. And if we're doing our jobs well, that return should actually grow over time because we've set up a foundation that you can keep learning and growing and succeeding through your career. And I do know that that's a high bar, but the skepticism is real and we should take it seriously.
Yeah. And you just mentioned return on investment, and that's also something I have heard in the past as the number one argument, why people believe higher education might not be as valuable anymore.
That's right.
But you talk to students, parents, and employers a lot.
I do.
What do you hear from them? Like, what are their needs when they think about higher education, apart from, just getting a nice salary afterwards?
Well, I talked about on the student side, the parent side on one side, and then employers. We live in a different kind of an industry. Obviously, we're student-centric, but sometimes I need to help students understand that who I really have to be listening to is the employers. Because if we do right by the employers, we automatically do right by the students. So when I say that, for example, I hear as illustration, a lot about AI and changes in technology. I would add social media into that and just digital technologies, digital data. But actually, the faster technology changes, the more demand for humans who can think better. So people say, oh, well, maybe we don't need higher ed because AI is going to use all of our jobs. It's going to take all of our jobs. That is absolutely not true. It is going to change them. And so what I hear just almost to every day from employers is, I need more students, employees who lean in, who engage, who think critically, they think creatively, they take initiative. I mean, that to me is music to my ears, because that's exactly how we should be developing our students. And it's pushing us to think, okay, how are we making sure they can do just that when they're out of the classroom? How are we challenging their critical, creative thinking? I think into this point about how do we make sure it counts, we're going to have to just keep pushing on that it adds value to their lives. Right? So, I just gave you kind of the employer side. I want people who can communicate well, engage, take initiative, solve problems. On the human side, what I hear increasingly, and especially from alumni, is they want to make sure they have a life of meaning and value. Well, there's dignity in work. There's so much opportunity here that I think I would like us to get more purposeful on the student side. They need to understand what we're hearing from employers and why we're doing the training and development that we are. But I also want them to know this is about them. And it needs to be about helping them live really satisfying, meaningful lives.
Yeah. I love what you said about, new technology coming in, but also about giving people meaning, because I think that's very, very critical these days when it comes to jobs. And I feel like, just imagine you leave school with a degree and you actually bring something new to a company that they are not that good at yet, or that they don't know that much about, but you add that value because you've learned it in school. I think that would be, a very beautiful picture.
I can't agree more. I think helping the students understand that they do bring new value, but also the humility to start to know what they don't know, which is really hard, especially for a younger professional.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So business schools today, what do you think they're missing?
Well, I truly think one of the things that they're missing is the more applied approach to learning. It's why when I came back to Lindner and UC, I leaned into co-op. I think it is quite seriously the best, most distinctive thing that we do here at UC. Every business school talks about experiential learning. They don't mean it the same way we do. They mean an occasional study abroad or maybe an internship. I get that. Believe me, I think both of those are really valuable. But we bake it in from day one. Our students, we start talking about the need to get out there and try out what they're learning in a classroom from the very first moment they step onto this campus. Whether it's a first-year freshman or it's a grad student, it's about applying what you do, what you learn. Because, we talk about problem solving, but how are you going to know what tools you're good at using and how to work around the messiness of problems if you don't practice? Once upon a time at UC, co-op was called professional practice, and I was actually thinking about it this weekend, that now it seems old-fashioned, but it is what we're talking about. We're talking about practicing your professional skills on a regular basis. You learn it in a classroom, you practice, you reflect, which means you basically step back, you get some feedback, you think about what worked, what didn't, and then you come back and you innovate, and you go, okay, how would I do it better next time? And it's this rinse, wash, and repeat process that we need to help our students understand that's what learning is, and you can be really intentional about it.
Yes, for sure. And co-op, one of the fun facts I learned when I joined the university is UC is actually the inventor of the co-op model, right?
That's right.
In 1905, is that correct?
I think that's right.
Something like that.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And I think what I don't want us to do is take it for granted. Yes. Because when I hear all the other schools talking about experiential learning, I think they are missing what it really means. When we say co-op, we mean cooperative. It is actually a collaborative approach to learning that engages the student, the faculty and staff, meaning faculty may be in the classroom, staff both as advisors in career services, and always, always the employer. I actually just left my office upstairs. I happened to walk through a big group of employers. They were here from California, and we just immediately started talking about co-op, and I realized one of the things, they're walking actually by this room as I speak, but these employers, what they care about is the ability to give us feedback if they're seeing any sort of a trend that they're concerned about, or even that they love and they want to see more of. That's how we innovate in our curriculum all the time. It's continuous improvement, and it's because of the employers.
Yeah, so that's goes back to what you mentioned in the beginning. We're not an ivory tower.
No.
We actually get the feedback from the outside, from the employers, to develop our programs further.
Yeah, and listen and use it.
Yeah. So now we already digged into co-op and experiential learning as part of the answer of future higher ed. Would you say it's just a resume booster, or is it actually more than that?
Oh, I think it's so much more. And you can hear, I drink the Kool-Aid, but I drink it with good reason, because I've seen business schools around the world, and I don't think there's anything like it. Obviously it's a resume booster. You look really different when you come out of, especially an undergrad, with that level of experience. But it's a huge skill booster, right? Because you've practiced, you've built capabilities. You can say, here's what I can do, which is really different. But the other piece, it's about confidence and resilience. The more often we can help our students try, fail sometimes, and try again, the better they will get at knowing they can try again. They can get back up. And in fact, actually, that's how we learn and grow. We need people out of their comfort zones. And co-op and our brand of experiential learning does just that.
Yeah, I totally agree with the confidence part, because I do think, having been in the business school myself, for bachelor's, master's, and even a PhD, you learn all those academic and theoretically concepts of how it should be, which is great and which is an important skill to acquire during your education. But what I experienced, when you leave school, you're there and then you see, there's a reason for why not everyone is able to apply them right away.
That's right.
There's corporate politics, there's culture, there's the economy that impacts a lot of things, the market, and even people. I think business is all about people as well. You will collaborate with a lot of people within your corporation or outside of your corporation, and it's so important to experience that and to acquire skills on top of the theoretical frameworks.
I appreciate the way you said that, because you can teach so many theories, and I'm a theorist. I believe in good theory. So you can teach great theories and concepts and tools, but it's how you apply them is where they add value. And you don't know how you apply them and when they work and when they don't work and when you have to work around them or tweak them until you're actually in the moment. And that's super important. The other thing I was thinking as you said that, Marlene, is sometimes I will run into students who will tell me how much they love co-op, and they'll say, I learned more in my co-op than I've ever learned in a classroom. And they say it meaning maybe I should just be working, and that's one of the criticisms of higher ed. But what they're missing, and I try to help them understand this, is the reason they are learning so much on those co-ops is because we use this feedback loop with what happens in the class, what happens in the co-op, and then do it again. So now I'm being a theorist. They call it absorptive capacity. It means that in the classroom, we're teaching them how to absorb what's happening in the real world. I love that. I don't care where they think it happened, as long as it happens faster and better for them. But I do kind of try to help them realize it's a beautiful circle that happens with both of those sides, the theory and the practice.
I agree. And actually, I would argue the theory gives us kind of like the compass, right? To like, what is the ideal state of leadership or of marketing or finance or, all these concepts out there. And then the practice just shows us, these little challenges we have, in order to make that happen,
Though it's funny that you say that, because I teach leadership, and I've been studying leadership obviously for a long time, and it is such a hard concept to teach, especially in an undergraduate classroom, because some of the theories, if you teach it to someone who has never had a co-op, they go, well, obviously, okay, you've not been out there. What I'm trying to show you is best practice. And then if you are in a classroom where you've got lots of people who have been on co-op, I actually start my first leadership class with, let's talk about bosses from hell. Sorry, for the language, but my point is, once you've had bad bosses, which is the number one reason that people leave a job, is a bad leader, you start to have something to work with, because then they realize these theories, they are ideal. They're ideal states. They do not happen regularly. In fact, they're not the norm, which is why if you could learn them faster, you will be so far ahead of others.
Yeah. Actually, I'm smiling a lot right now because I think we should have an episode just on leadership and how it works in practice, because that's actually something I can relate with myself. I would say even like the things I didn't like about former bosses is what taught me the most.
I agree.
Because you actually learn, I don't want to be like
what
that.
What not to do.
But there's a reason why they acted like that, right? So, right. Do you have a co-op student in mind or a co-op story in mind that stands out? That's a good example of, this combination of theory and practice.
It's a great question. I mean, I have a lot of students I think about. I was thinking about one this morning that is kind of classic. I had a student years ago who said to me, I want to be in sports. And I have students all the time who say things like, I want to be in sports, or I want to be in fashion, or they'll give me something like a context. Those are super competitive worlds. And I said to him, here's what you got to do. Given how competitive sports are, you need to get really good at something and then start figuring out how to apply it to sports. And he decided it would be finance. Which, at first I was like, all right, I thought maybe he'd go marketing or something else, or data or analytics, but he said finance. And I remember these conversations. I mean, he was a young guy, he was a first generation student, he was putting his way through school, and he comes to me and he said, I got my first co-op, but and this is before we were mandatory, and it means multiple paid professional experiences. And he said, well, I've got great news and some bad news. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, it's not paid. All right, ouch. And it's in Indianapolis, and I'm going to commute there. And I said, are you sure? This seems really risky. And he said, it's with the Pacers.
Oh, wow.
It is my dream job. It's worth it for a summer. And I said, and this is a kid who's putting his way through school. I mean, he is such a good guy. And I said, if you're sure, I will back you 110%. But boy, this is going to be a tough summer. And not only did it go well, I mean, he's arguably one of the best sports financiers now in the country. He is at every NBA and NFL draft helping the new draftees, meaning the top 5 picks, with their finances. And he's amazing. And I help him connect with other students so he can repay and kind of the favor and help them make sure that they are really, really good at whatever it is, finance, analytics, marketing, accounting. It doesn't matter, because the only way you get into a super competitive is to demonstrate that you have the skills and grit to be there. Yeah. And I love that story. And every time I see him, I give him a big hug, because I'm so proud of how well it worked, but also how hard he worked to get there.
Yeah, I love that story too. I think that's someone who we could also have on the podcast.
Oh, he's fantastic.
It's a great story. I want to learn more about it. So we talked about experiential learning and co-op. And I mean, I'm hooked. I think, this is a great model and a great answer to the future of higher ed. But why aren't more schools using it or embracing it?
Because it's a really heavy lift. If you were to do it the way UC does it, you have to build a whole infrastructure so people think about it, from recruiting to orientation to the first year experience to the way you set up career coaches to advisors to faculty. I mean, if you do it right, it touches everything. I mean, it was why it is a big deal to do it the way we do. And I think the reason why I said, it's missing now in schools is they want it because they know the market wants that sort of experience, but they're not really willing to put in the heavy lifting. So what they'll do is say, hey, you can get an internship over here, or we'll give you an opportunity to study abroad. But that's not the same as baking it into the way that just permeates what you do and your culture. It's a lot of resources, time and energy, and it's just a culture. But once you have that virtuous cycle revving, the engine just works really, really well. It's just hard to build.
Yeah, and you already mentioned that, like what differentiates Lindner from other schools. I mean, it's not just providing internship opportunities to students. It's more about also this collaboration with employers, with the community, to make sure there's this feedback loop, to really make sure there's value in it, not just for that individual student, but for, the college or the university as a whole, right?
That's right.
If I were a parent or a student, why would you say, should I choose Lindner?
I was actually talking to parents yesterday at an orientation, and I basically try to answer that question by saying, because we will transform your student. And I know that sounds like a really big promise, but it's almost hard not to. If you're really going to push people out of their comfort zone with a beautiful safety net and lots of learning and development supports around them, the difference between a first-year student and a graduating senior is remarkable. I love it. I mean, I get weepy at every graduation because I see these students who look like very young children when they joined us and suddenly look like working professionals when they leave. That's amazing. But I also even feel that way about our graduate students because, unlike the typical undergraduate, a graduate student comes here because they know exactly what they need right now. It's actually a harder lift because it's a shorter time frame and a very specific goal. But they are also empowered to make the most of the resources we have here, and they do really well. So I think it's about transformation, and I love that.
Yeah, sounds really beautiful. And what would you say is co-op and experiential learning? What part does that have in this transformation?
I mean, ultimately, co-op and experiential learning are these contexts of discomfort, of challenge. And, it reminds me, I'm using a leadership model, but Warren Bennis was the former president here, and we have a leadership institute named after him. And one of his lines that we use all the time is that leadership is forged in the crucible. It means in your hardest times, you grow the most. It is true every time. I love the classroom. If you want crucibles, you need to be out of the classroom. I mean, a test is hard. It's nothing like a tough boss, a major project, learning how to navigate New York City for the summer. I mean, you name it. These are all things. And by the way, everything I just said could probably happen at once, all at once for co-op students. That's a good thing. When they come back and say, I did it. Oh my God. Back to the confidence and the resilience. It's huge. And it makes them that much better the next time they have such a challenge.
That's very true. And actually, if I think about it, also when they go out to do their co-op, their internship or whatever, they're on their own,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's also different because college is still, you're moved out of your parents' home maybe, but you're still in a protective environment in a group.
That's
true.
true.
When you do your co-op, it's just you and your new colleagues. Yeah. Some of them much older than you maybe.
But it's funny that you said that because sometimes parents will get really like, what do you mean that they just do it? And you're like, yeah, they do. And we have a whole network in these cities, or whether it's in Cincinnati or I said New York or wherever the case might be, but they have alumni, they have other students, but ultimately they do have to figure it out themselves because nobody else can.
Yes.
And that's a good thing.
Exactly. And it makes you, grow to be the person you want to be.
It does.
Yeah. So if we go back to the future of higher education, if you could just design higher education from scratch, where would you start?
It's such a tough question. I would start with the end in mind. What do you want the ideal graduate to look like? What do you want their capabilities to be, their confidence? And I do think that starts with looking at the employer side, but it also starts with looking at the human side, the students. Like, they may not know exactly what they're going to need for their career, but they know what they want. They want to feel fulfilled and energized. And, valued, right, for who they are. When we were doing a project, and I guess it was well over a decade ago, this is going to sound really funny, but we had a cutout of Justin Bieber. He just happened to be popular at the time. And we were trying to decide how to really redesign. And we had to redesign because we were moving from quarters to semesters, so it's a bigger project. But what everybody would do is they'd put Post-its on Justin. Justin, by the way, the cutout would scare me. People would hide it in my office. It became fun too. But, he'd have a passport and how do you build cultural competency? And he'd have a calculator, but the whole point was about analytics and data and technology. And I guess my point being, you got to start with the student. And I think if we were to start over, that might sound like a strange place to start because you'd think we're doing that now, but things develop through inertia over time, and we can lose our way. I will never let us lose our way because I think about our students every day, and it's hard sometimes to say, do we really have the curriculum and the supports for what a student needs today? And I do think a lot has changed post-pandemic with technologies. I think we should really push ourselves to ask, are we doing the right things now?
Yeah. Do you have some ideas what could be the right things?
Well, I actually think one of the big projects we're doing right now is on engagement. Mm-hmm. So, there's really concerning research about the challenges of social media, and I think this is also kind of what I would call it, this sounds harsh, but pandemic-stunted learning, is that there's a more passive approach to engaging. Boy, you don't learn through passive action. passive efforts. You need to be active. You need to actually roll up your sleeves. You need to be not just sitting in a classroom, but talking and listening, asking questions, and then out in co-op and study abroads, and not just being a tourist and letting it, wash over you, but really questioning what's happening here, why, how could I be better in those situations? Engagement is about leaning in with a very strong purpose, and I think we're going to have to push harder to do that. I don't know exactly what it means. We have a lot of people thinking about it this summer in the college, thinking about critical thinking, engagement, and ways that you get out of maybe what can feel isolated, mm-hmm. either because you're stuck on your phone and believe me, I can be stuck on my phone. But the world is not on your phone. The world is right in front of you. And making the most of it means engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the piece that it keeps me up at night because I really want to make sure that, you can build these beautiful things, and if people don't take advantage of them, they've missed opportunities. It's something else I say to parents during orientation. Help your students take advantage of the opportunities here. Because we have so many variations, and it's really up to the individual student what they do and what they take advantage of. There's no cookie cutter here.
Yeah. And that actually links back to what I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, like how also on social media you have these discussions about what's the value of higher education. Well, not real discussions. You have people saying there is no value, Yeah. But I also find these things to be very critical because for some people that might be the right way to go, but not for all of us. No. But when you are exposed to this kind of content like 24/7, you might believe, okay,
yeah.
I don't need it, but you actually might,
But you might.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I fully agree. Do you think our mindsets need to change, especially us, from the academic world?
I do. I actually study mindsets. A mindset is basically a set of assumptions and understandings that helps you interpret experience. We've been working on a project here called the Next Mindset, which is, I'm going to get a little theoretical here, but there's a lot of different work on mindsets, like a growth mindset. Carol Dweck is about learning versus fixed, which is just, going through the motions. I study paradox mindset, which means people that embrace tensions, learn how to surf through competing demands rather than get paralyzed. I think mindset matters enormously. There's great research that shows it either fuels or inhibits your learning and growth. We're working hard to determine how are we fostering a mindset that is around innovative problem solving. It's about learning. It's about embracing tensions. Because if we help students do those things, they will have a better career and life long after they leave Lindner and UC.
Yes, for sure. How do you think we can rebuild trust in higher education or keep the trust that we still have?
Personally, I think we need to demonstrate our value every day. We need to show it with great stories of student success down to, data that shows everything from placement rates, graduation rates, retention rates. I've kind of moved backwards from those, because ultimately they need to stay, they need to graduate, they need to get a job. And that sort of data really matters a great deal to ROI, but I also think it needs to be in the human stories. I want any and every student who graduates from us to be able to tell stories about why it mattered. And I think it's that consistency of data at a macro level to stories at a micro level that works. And trust is easily broken. So when someone has an issue or a situation that it hasn't worked, I appreciate when they reach out. And sometimes they do. And we have conversations about that. What went wrong? What else can we do? Because everybody is different.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable, actually. Everybody's different. Because as I mentioned before, for some people, college might not be it.
Yeah,
but for lots of people, it probably is, and that's why it's so valuable to look into yourself.
But if I could, because I actually have really good conversations with people in the community about when it isn't. Mm-hmm. And there are wonderful community colleges and trade schools. I don't believe we should have free education because I think that would actually force everyone to be in higher ed. I don't think it's for everybody. I do think there's enough data at this point to know that those with a college education do better financially by leaps and bounds than generally others. But that said, boy, you need great tradespeople, people who are craftswomen. It's hugely important to our world. I just think we need to help students figure out what's right for them.
Yes. And the earlier the better.
And
probably,
the earlier
right?
the better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've known you for a little bit and you're very passionate about your work. So I'd be curious for our audience, what motivates you to be a leader in education?
Really what motivates me is stories like the one I just shared of my student who ended up at the Pacers. And then, that's huge. That's life-changing. I can have a real impact. And it's not, that sounds maybe egotistical, but boy, it matters. I love the power of education. I see it every day, and I want to put it on steroids because I think we have what it takes to do just that.
Yes, sounds good. And I really want to meet that student.
Deal. He's
it's
fabulous.
A great story. I know we have multiple more stories.
We do.
But
we have lots of stories.
It's particularly beautiful. And if you were to give advice to other schools out there, business schools maybe in particular, what would you say is the one bold move you would advise them to take?
I would encourage them to be bold about their experiential learning. Stop treating it as kind of throw something over the fence. Okay, now you're overseas, or now you're on a study abroad, or now you're in an internship, and think very creatively and ambitiously about how you bring it into the classroom, so that rather have this kind of binary of I'm either in class or out of class, you're connecting those dots. I'm not saying this is easy, but you could start in small and meaningful ways.
Small and meaningful ways. That sounds great. And I think we've reached the end of our episode. So thank you so much, Marianne, for sharing your thoughts and having this discussion with me. To all our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in today. And if that conversation has sparked something in you, we'd really appreciate if you leave us a comment. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing or leaving a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, because it really helps other people finding us out there. So thank you for tuning in, and go Bearcats!